And about his attitude. Smarty pants! Why can't it be more like that nice boy Mario? Oh! Little brat!
Aw man, console wars used to be awesome, didn't they? Back in the day when the guys making the consoles also made lots of the games, and every interface was actually completely different, there really were all kinds of things for them to call each other out over. Which is why 5 or 6 years ago, this then-pending conflict was looking as boring as hell, let's be honest. Sega was gone, and Nintendo was looking content to just do their own thing until Apple or whoever came by and absorbed them, leaving the war, such as it was, to be fought by not game makers, but by the game-making divisions of monolithic multinational corporations. Sony and Microsoft's third and second, respectively, consoles were, in effect, just their own predecessors but with prettier graphics, faster internet, and different sides in the parallel new-gen DVD war, and that looked like the foreseeable future of the console wars, an HD arms race raging back and forth into eternity. And then something funny happened. Somebody woke up Daddy.
We would like to play.
Instead of a console war, we had a console slaughter, with Nintendo and their little white miracle machine sitting atop a pile of money and goodwill so high that almost no one is acting like it's conceivable for Sony and Microsoft to catch up, at least in sales anyway, instead fighting it out over who gets to wind up as number 2. Now, while I'm well aware that pointing this out is tantamount to throwing firecrackers down a fanboy hole, whatever you and I may think about the Wii, it is the center of the gaming universe right now, inasmuch as every major development in the industry has either been a move toward it or a move away from it. And the most immediate result of this is that the story of console gaming in the here and now wasn't HD, memory size, or online speed, but motion control. Which is why here at the likely midpoint of their respective lifespan, the 360 and PS3 are gearing up for the release of their own answer to the Wii Remote phenomenon. What does that mean? Well, take it away, shitty Clone Wars version of Yoda.
Begun. This Waggle war has.
Well, who would have thunk it? After spending nearly the better half of a decade talking about motion control and the Wii Remote in particular as a shallow gimmick, Sony and Microsoft, or rather the video game divisions of Sony and Microsoft, are going whole hog with the expensive peripherals designed to act as transitional devices between their current machines and the motion controllers that'll almost certainly come standard on the next generation of machines. For a change of pace, this time it's actually Microsoft taking the riskier plunge. Project Natal throws out the concept of controllers altogether, instead going for body-tracking interactive camera technology. I'm not sure how practical it is for a whole console, but as a test-run technology, it's probably the smartest move. Physical controls can always be incorporated onto the Xbox 720 or whatever the hell they plan on calling the next machine, and for now you're not stuck producing a whole ton of extra plastic for something that, let's face it, is going to wind up pretty niche for the first couple years, if at all. Sony, on the other hand, has taken that old saying about if you can't beat 'em quite literally in creating the PlayStation Move. The controller can be, charitably, said to resemble little more than a black Wii Remote with a colored bubble stuck on top. But most notably, the console maker formerly reputed as the most strident of all in terms of the out-with-the-old approach, seems to have embraced a form of the technology philosophy espoused by Nintendo's late Gunpei Yokoi, which he called Kareta Gijitsu no Suihei Shikoi. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, but it means lateral thinking of withered technology. This basically means that before you build straight-up new stuff, you make newer stuff out of old stuff, which Sony has done by repurposing the iToy to be Move's camera input. At this point, much of what Move actually aims to be remains shrouded in mystery, with more developments promised in the near future. This is a new angle for Sony, who usually aren't too keen on doling out technological info piece by piece at a time. Why announce something this major as a tease all the way back at GDC, instead of waiting for one of the bigger shows in the near future? It's almost like everyone is petrified of being overshadowed at E3, but what could they possibly be worried about? Oh, right. That might happen. The one thing Sony does want you to know about Move is what it isn't, namely a Wii Remote. So insistent has been the marketing and PR on this point, I'd only be half surprised if it didn't turn out to be the tagline at launch. PlayStation Move. It's not a Wii Remote. And okay, fine, nothing wrong with that. After all, no one likes to be accused of following the leader, even if that's precisely what they're doing. Move is, in fact, the PS3's version of a Wii remote, and there's nothing wrong with that. What's kind of instructive, though, is the manner in which they're so far selling it. Right now, Move is in that fascinating stage of game marketing where the general public doesn't know the product exists, and so the pitch is being aimed solely at web-savvy gamers. In other words, this is the point where we get to find out exactly what the game companies actually think of us. And so far, judging by the first teases of what sort of game can be expected on the Move, I can make two immediate observations. First, that Move is being unsurprisingly positioned as the hardcore gamer alternative to the Wii, and second, that Sony considers hardcore gamers to be idiots. See, from where I sit, there are basically two functional definitions of hardcore when it comes to video games and the people who play them. From the perspective of tradition and, I guess, optimism, the definition would simply be someone who plays a lot of video games, or a game that requires intense dedication, or perhaps one following the other. At the very least, I'd imagine that this is the way genuine hardcore gamers see themselves, and would prefer that the industry see them as well. However, there's a much more cynical interpretation that's equally pervasive, that hardcore is nothing more than a catch-all phrase for a certain brand of adolescent flavor that can be easily produced for marketing purposes. The notion that it's not the skill requirements or involvement that make a game hardcore, but rather its superficial aesthetic choices. Brown and gray are hardcore. The primary colors are not. Space-armored, steroid-infused douchebags are hardcore. Plumbers who ride dinosaurs are not. Case in point, one of Move's planned inaugural titles, currently codenamed Motion Fighter, but more precisely to be known as Move's version of Wii Sports Boxing. Now, if I may, realistically, any game whose control scheme relies primarily on motion control is going to be a casual game, because let's face it, you get tired pretty quickly doing that stuff. So how exactly do you position Motion Fighter as hardcore? Well, it might be a deeper control mechanism. That's certainly what it looks like in the new Kevin Butler video. But come on, you and I both know the probable answer. Motion Fighter is hardcore because it has almost no color and stars beefy, tattooed douchebags instead of cartoon characters. I mean, geez, look at this thing. If you asked someone to draw a parody of what a PS3 Wii boxing would look like, they'd probably draw this. Whatever. The fact remains, right now the future of gaming is looking very much like a long run of my Waggle can beat your Waggle, for better or for worse. Although for now, at least in the near future, it seems to have become a secondary concern for the guys who got the ball rolling in the first place. Remember, Nintendo had their big hit in 2009 when they realized that the answer to what do our fans want was to play Super Mario Bros. 3 again, and now it's looking like the beginning of a trend. Have you seen the trailers for the new Metroid? Well, it might use 3D graphics, but it plays in 2D. In fact, the control scheme is literally a throwback to the NES Metroid, with the added bonus of a first-person sniper vision when you point the Wii remote at the TV. Wouldn't that be a kick, though, if Move and Nadal come out and Nintendo's response was, motion control? Yeah, that was fun, but you know where it's really at now? 2D platformers, man. Alright, so maybe not, but it could happen. Stranger things have.